Tonight, 3 workers trapped in a BC mine are safe and sound.
We've got all 3 of them. They're in good spirits. I mean, goosebumps as I say it.
Stuck underground for nearly 3 days, how they were rescued and their first words when they reached the surface. Donald Trump warns a trade deal with Canada might not be reached.
I think Canada could be one where they'll just pay tariffs.
Not guilty, but the 5 former players acquitted of sexual assault are still benched.
Inevitably, we see teams make decisions based on skills and less on character.
Will the NHL allow them to return to the ice?
From CBC News, this is The National with Paul Hunter.
Thanks for joining us. Adrian is away. Tonight, 3 drill operators who spent 60 hours trapped underground in a BC mine are now home. Kevin Coombs, Jesse Chubati, and Darian Maduke, they're the 3 in the middle, emerged in good spirits after a rapid rescue effort managed to penetrate a 30-meter section of collapsed tunnel and get them to safety. Lindsay Duncombe is at Red Chris Mine in northern BC, where the mood is relief, but questions remain.
Safe and smiling, the 3 rescued drillers posing here with their bosses are on their way home after 60 hours deep underground. Mine officials say the first thing they said to rescue crews, a joke, that they'd had time to catch up on sleep.
And certainly when the rescue team announced to us, we've got all 3 of them, they're in good spirits. I mean, goosebumps as I say it, happiness, but more happiness for them.
The workers spent 3 nights in a refuge chamber like this one. They had food, water, and appeared healthy when they got to the surface. Driller Jesse Chubati posted online, "Glad to be out of there. To all my mining brothers, stay safe down there." Newmont, which owns the mine in a remote part of northwestern BC, says safety was central to the rescue plan. First, a large scoop like this one, operated by remote control, cleared a path through 30 meters of debris. Then rescuers used a vehicle like this to carefully extract the men.
And one by one, we drove them, one person through and the second person through. And that was the people that went out to them 700 meters further. And then we drove them back to a safe place.
This retired mine rescuer says it looks like crews were prepared.
The miners, they would have practiced this drill. They know where the refuge stations are. They have practiced runs.
The question now? Why were there 2 rock falls in the same area? The drillers were working at the site of a proposed underground copper and gold mine, separate from the open pit operations here. Newmont has promised a full investigation, so has the province.
The ministry and the company will be doing separate investigations into what happened to make sure it doesn't happen again.
The proposed mine is one of the projects the Premier wants to fast-track in light of American tariffs. Mining watchdogs don't want Canada to move quickly on new projects at the expense of safety.
We're already seeing, I think, some very dangerous precedents.
The surface mine operations are back up and running here, Paul, but the underground work has stopped. It'll stay that way as the investigation gets underway and the mine and the province figure out what happened and how to work safely.
And Lindsay, I mean, gosh, I can only imagine how the families are feeling.
So much relief. I actually phoned Jesse Chubati's grandma in Winnipeg, and she said that the last few days have been terrible, and she cannot wait to be reunited with her grandson.
Thanks, Lindsay. The CBC's Lindsay Duncombe reporting not far from that mine in northern BC. In Quebec, people are cleaning up tonight after thunderstorms caused major flooding and power outages. Powerful winds downed trees and power lines when the storms hit Thursday night. In Quebec City, a pair of vehicles were stuck in a flooded underpass. One of the drivers had to be rescued from the roof of his car. Luckily, no injuries have been reported. Well, it's looking increasingly unlikely Canada and the U.S. will ink a trade deal by August 1st, the latest deadline in this trade war, deadline set by the U.S. president. But as Rafi Boudjikanian shows us, he is now publicly indicating it may not be met.
Only a week out from his deadline to reach new trade deals around the world, the U.S. president musing there may not be one with Canada.
We haven't really had a lot of luck with Canada. I think Canada could be one where they'll just pay tariffs, not really a negotiation.
Canada's steel, aluminum and auto sectors are already being hit with punishing tariffs. Now, the U.S. is threatening to impose a 35% levy on all Canadian goods not covered under the existing free trade agreement. Ottawa first said it was aiming for a tariff-free deal, but has recently managed expectations on that and hitting the August 1st deadline.
We are looking for the best deal for Canada. We are only going to accept the best deal for Canada.
Just what makes for the best deal isn't clear, but Canadian officials are still pushing, meeting this week with their American counterparts in Washington.
These are complex negotiations. The Canadian-American economic and security relationship is unique.
Some are pointing out Canada has been through Trump negotiations before, and they can take time.
When he forced in his first term the renegotiation of the NAFTA, he said it'll be done in 7 to 8 weeks. And it took us 7 rounds, official rounds, and then a couple of unofficial rounds in 17 months before we came to a deal that, in the end, has worked very well for the U.S. And for Canada.
Trump says his team hasn't been focused on Canada, but has been working diligently to get a deal with the European Union. He's now in Scotland and set to meet with European officials.
I think we have a good 50-50 chance. That's a lot.
Canadian officials say they will again go to Washington next week, hoping to iron out irritants for this country's agreement. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
Before he left for Scotland, Donald Trump was also asked whether he's considering a pardon for the woman who helped Jeffrey Epstein abuse underage girls. Ghislaine Maxwell is serving 20 years, but the Trump administration spent the last 2 days meeting with her. As Karen Pauls explains, that prompts the question, why?
U.S. President Donald Trump is facing fresh questions about meetings his officials arranged with Jeffrey Epstein's ex-girlfriend, British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, who's serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking.
Would you consider a pardon or a commutation for Ghislaine Maxwell?
I'm allowed to do it, but it's something I have not thought about.
The U.S. Deputy Attorney General sat down with Maxwell and her lawyers for 2 days amidst protests and fierce public backlash, including from Trump's base, over the administration's perceived lack of transparency about documents related to Epstein's case. The convicted sex offender died by suicide in 2019.
She has been treated unfairly.
After Friday's meeting, Maxwell's lawyer wouldn't confirm if they're hoping for a deal.
No offers have been made, no.
Trump has tried to distance himself from his former friend. But this week, the New York Times revealed Trump's name appeared on a contributor list for a book celebrating Epstein's 50th birthday, bolstering a Wall Street Journal report detailing the message to Epstein, outlined in the shape of a naked woman with the cryptic birthday wish, "May every day be a wonderful secret."
I don't even know what they're talking about. Now, somebody could have written a letter and used my name, but that's happened a lot.
I think it's very clear that the president does not want this out.
Democrats among those questioning the timing and the substance of those meetings with Maxwell.
She's somebody who has something to gain by possibly protecting the president, by protecting other powerful people in turn, in hopes of maybe getting out.
Questions Trump can't shake, even traveling abroad.
A lot of people are asking me about pardons. Obviously, this is no time to be talking about pardons.
But for Maxwell, this might be exactly the time. She's been subpoenaed by Congress for a deposition scheduled for August 11th. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Toronto.
The U.S. and Israel are swiftly condemning France's promise to recognize a Palestinian state. It comes as ceasefire talks break down again. And as Nala Ayed shows us, with the starvation crisis in Gaza worsening ever more.
In the quest to find food in Gaza, waiting in the heat is just the start. Tekiya, they call it, community kitchens that hand out hot food, a line of last resort against Gaza's hunger. And so Sabrine Jaidi showed up at 6 a.m. We have 20 people in the tent, and the little children are crying for flour, she says. We are forced to come to feed our children. When it is a matter of survival, even handouts come with a cost. Israeli and American negotiators withdrew from ceasefire talks Thursday, blaming Hamas for not acting in good faith.
Hamas didn't really want to make a deal. They're going to be hunted down.
Late Thursday, France's president declared plans to recognize a Palestinian state in September, saying there was no alternative to a two-state solution. Israel's prime minister swiftly condemned the plan as rewarding terror. Prime Minister Mark Carney, meanwhile, wrote, Canada condemns the Israeli government's failure to prevent the humanitarian disaster in Gaza. Canada, he added, supports a two-state solution, but he stopped short of planning to recognize one.
So what is preventing us?
So I am traveling to New York on Monday to have this very conversation with our counterparts.
But there's more that G7 countries, including Canada, could do to end the crisis, says this Canadian former UN Special Rapporteur.
That countries in the global north are going to have to take a significant step forward by looking at sanctions on Israel in order to make any lasting progress on achieving a Palestinian state.
In Gaza, Palestinians welcomed France's announcement as overdue. But this man made his point by asking the children around him, what do you want, a state or flour right now? He asked. They want to eat, he says. You're talking to me about waiting for France. People are waiting for aid. And people are still waiting for aid. Nala Ayed, CBC News, London.
There are growing fears tonight of an extended border conflict between Cambodia and Thailand after fighting raged for a second day. The two countries traded artillery and rocket fire, which has already driven tens of thousands from their homes on both sides of the border and killed at least 20 people. Each side accuses the other of starting the conflict and of targeting civilian areas. Malaysia has offered to mediate a ceasefire. Thailand says it would prefer direct talks. A clearer picture is emerging tonight of just what happened in the hours before a neighborhood dispute in Maple Ridge, BC, turned deadly. 2 people were killed. A third appears to have taken his own life. Yasmin Renea now with what neighbors saw unfold.
Police officers still on the scene Friday morning, a reminder of the violent night that stunned this quiet street.
It's really shocking to see this happening in our neighborhood.
On Wednesday night, shots fired, cars up in flames, and 3 people left dead after what police call a neighborhood dispute.
It's been going on for a number of years.
A couple in their 60s and their dog were killed inside their home, their garage set on fire. The suspect, who lives across the street, later found dead of an apparent suicide. Bruce Fairweather was with the woman killed hours before the attack and says he saw the suspect threaten her.
She said something to him across the street and he commented about breaking her neck.
Police were called to the neighborhood 3 hours before the killings, but officers made no arrests. Then, just before 11 p.m., neighbors saw the cars on fire and rushed to help.
Kind of heroically, there was a number of neighbors went to the front door. The front door had been smashed open, so right away they knew there was something going on.
Yeah, I'm upset. I'm really upset that that happened.
Several residents who spoke to CBC News say the couple and their neighbor had been feuding over issues like street parking, backyard fires, and the couple's dog.
She always had the dog on a long leash, and the dog would go up on his property, and he didn't want anyone or anything on his property.
CBC News isn't identifying those involved pending notification of next of kin. The neighborhood has been left shaken.
They were just a good couple, you know, nice to have as neighbors and very engaging. So to see them both gone now it's hard to fathom, really.
Homicide investigators continue to look into the couple's deaths as a community in mourning awaits answers. Yasmin Renea, CBC News, Vancouver.
There are questions tonight about what comes next for the 5 former Hockey Canada players acquitted of sexual assault. The NHL says they cannot play for now. Jamie Strachan looks at whether they could return to the ice.
With a not guilty verdict secured, lawyers for the 5 players talked about how this case had derailed their careers.
Alex Formanton was barely 18 years old and on the verge of a promising hockey career that came to a screeching halt on June 18, 2018.
The damage to Mr. McLeod's reputation and his career has been significant.
4 of the 5, Dylan Dubé, Cal Foote, Carter Hart, and Michael McLeod, were all playing in the NHL before charges were laid and are now unrestricted NHL free agents. They have no ties to any team. But if a team wanted any of them, could they play? Right now, no. The NHL says the players are ineligible. In a statement, the league said the allegations made in this case, even if not determined to have been criminal, were disturbing and the behavior at issue was unacceptable. The league's collective bargaining agreement gives Commissioner Gary Bettman broad powers to punish players for off-ice conduct, but must tread carefully, this expert says.
There is a sexual culture of hockey. I know it. I have had players disclose the past that they have had within hockey where very bad things have happened. And this will send a message that hockey condones this type of sexual culture.
The Players Association says they should be allowed to play. After missing more than a full season of their respective NHL careers, they should now have the opportunity to return to work.
History has shown that for players who have been charged or even convicted of a criminal offense, if they have ability on the ice, on the field of play, there is a road back.
Many athletes, including stars like Mike Tyson, Kobe Bryant, and Michael Vick, have returned to glory after serious charges or even jail time. That could be the case here, according to this expert.
Inevitably, we see teams make decisions based on skills and less on character and personal attributes.
There's no timeline for the NHL to make its decision, but even if the players are allowed back, it'll be up to individual teams to decide if it's worth it. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Former Republican U.S. Congressman George Santos, who pleaded guilty to fraud charges, has now begun serving his 7-year sentence. Santos reported to a federal prison in New Jersey. He was sentenced in April after admitting to stealing other people's identities and deceiving donors to fund his congressional campaign. In 2023, the accusations led to his expulsion from Congress. On social media this week, he said, "I may be leaving the stage for now, but trust me, legends never truly exit." The Great Lakes are under threat tonight from a disruptive fish species with a voracious appetite.
The establishment of grass carp in the Great Lakes would be catastrophic.
We'll take you inside Canada's high-stakes war against invasive carp next. Plus, no hangovers and home by 9 p.m.
Going out at nighttime is not the vibe anymore.
I still need my sleep and my beauty rest.
Why some Canadians are choosing daytime gatherings over nightlife. And later, a celebrated sighting of a critically endangered reptile.
The fact that he or she spent so much time with us was just absolutely amazing.
The leatherback sea turtle that makes our moment. We're back in 2. In Greece, tourists visit the Acropolis before its daily midday closure, meant to avoid the worst of the extreme heat. The country is grappling with its 3rd major heat wave of the summer. The average daytime high is 43 degrees. At this shipyard outside Athens, work had to pause. Welding metal in the heat has become stifling, leaving some workers with lingering health issues. Canadian biologists are working to contain another cross-border threat, invasive grass carp. The fish are reproducing in U.S. waters, flowing into the Great Lakes. Colin Butler shows us the race to stop the voracious eaters before they change ecosystems forever.
That steady beep, it's electricity surging through the Grand River, the largest river in southern Ontario, a weapon in Canada's war on invasive fish.
Our goal is to prevent the establishment of grass carp in Canadian waters.
This Department of Fisheries patrol boat works to maintain the waters. Wires extend underwater to stun fish, then they're scooped up by wading nets. Native fish, like this walleye, are recorded and released. And if crews are lucky, they won't catch anything worse.
We haven't found a grass carp this year with our program, but that's a good sign.
Grass carp, one of 4 invasive Asian carp species, are reproducing in U.S. rivers that flow into Lake Erie.
They're always known as those fish that fly up and hit you in the face, but these ones are grass carp. They're not the ones that jump, so luckily I'll be okay.
But Ontario's waterways might not be. DFO teams haven't caught one here yet this year, but make no mistake, they're out there. 34 have been caught since 2013, 3 of those in this river alone. At full size, they can weigh 40 kilos.
In aquaculture facilities, when there's no vegetation for them to eat, they throw cabbages in, and they eat the cabbages.
This top expert on invasive fish says grass carp would devour the plants native fish depend on for spawning, for shade, and as a nursery for their young.
The establishment of grass carp in the Great Lakes would be catastrophic.
It's why scientists aren't just hunting invaders, they're also documenting native fish. Because once grass carp start breeding here, the ecosystem will be forever altered and not for the better. And that steady beep, it might be the final warning before the carp change everything. Colin Butler, CBC News, Dunnville, Ontario.
A growing number of Canadians are flipping the script on traditional nightlife culture.
People want to be inside by 8 o'clock, 9 p.m. People have families now.
Why the party crowd is tapping into a new daytime trend. Next. Plus, on the heels of the Hockey Canada acquittals, renewed conversations about restorative justice.
The person who experienced harm is at the very center, and we're here to focus on healing and helping them move forward while really prioritizing accountability.
Why advocates say restorative justice may be the best path forward. And also, could the trade war with the U.S. spell the end of free trade between neighbors?
I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly.
Why free trade may soon become dramatically less free. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world next.
Shapovalov? What if I told you he's right behind you right now?
Hi, guys.
Canada's tennis star Denis Shapovalov surprising a group of future players in Toronto today. This camp, part of Tennis Canada's drive to inspire the next generation. Shapovalov will now turn his attention to the National Bank Open in Montreal starting this weekend. There's a growing trend gaining popularity across Canada. People are ditching nightlife and partying in the light of day. Magda Gebrselassie shows us the benefits of daytime.
Make sure to keep the bar busy. Get yourself something to drink.
Packing the dance floor, popping bottles, and partying while the sun is still out. These partygoers are tapping into a growing daytime trend.
Going out at nighttime is not the vibe anymore.
I still need my sleep and my beauty rest.
Nighttime, you know, if I'm going to be honest, the men are a little weird.
Across Canada this summer, daytime parties are all the rage. For years, this trio has organized day parties, but now they're bigger and sell out fast.
People want to be inside by 8 o'clock, 9 p.m. People have families now.
There are different kinds of day parties. Some are family friendly, there are ladies only events, and then there are the parties that are swapping out serving spirits for more sobering selections.
You're not into this alcohol and drug things, so here people are all sober.
Hopped up on caffeine instead, thousands partied at this free event in Montreal. Spinning tunes from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., these DJs say the nightlife alternative tracks with a changing society.
Everybody's healthier, we eat better, we sleep better, we take better care of our bodies.
And I think it's also for financial reasons. Honestly, like the night scene, the club scene, etc., has extremely changed.
Day parties have caught the attention of this mental health expert too.
I've heard of some where there's like workout machines and exercise.
She says these early events show people are shifting away from escapism and late night unhealthy behaviors that can come with that.
I think that these kinds of gatherings, they really emphasize like intention, connection, vitality.
And an opportunity for partygoers to get a good night's rest. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, now let's break down the news shaping our world. Days before the August 1st deadline, it appears unlikely Canada and the U.S. will reach a trade deal.
I think Canada could be one where they'll just pay tariffs.
In the era of Trump's global tariff strategy, we'll break down why free trade may be an obsolete concept. But first,
instead of pursuing restorative justice, the Crown forced a distressing and unnecessary trial.
After 5 former junior hockey players were acquitted of sexual assault charges, there's a renewed conversation about the idea of restorative justice as an alternative to a criminal trial. We'll look at what restorative justice is and when it could be an option. Marley Liss is the founder of the advocacy group Survivors for Justice Reform and a sexual assault survivor herself. Thank you for joining us, first of all. I think people have been talking about restorative justice a lot in the last little while in this country. Why don't we begin by having you explain what it is? What is restorative justice?
Yeah, so I learned about restorative justice through experiencing it. I was going through the criminal legal system for 3 years as a survivor of sexual assault and just found so much re-victimization there and started looking for another option, and that's when I learned about restorative justice, which is not new. It's been around a long time. Indigenous communities especially have paved the way for it, and it really prioritizes repair over punishment. So in a criminal legal case where it's the accused versus the Crown, this is the person who experienced harm is at the very center, and we're here to focus on healing and helping them move forward while really prioritizing accountability.
But how does it work? You sit in a room with everyone? Like, how does it work?
It can look many different ways, which is good because victims are not a monolith, perpetrators are not a monolith, so it shouldn't be one size fits all. A really common one is a circle process, which is what I experienced. So yes, you sit in a room with the person who caused harm, and there are facilitators there who are focused on addressing that harm and getting really clear on what the survivor needs in order to feel a sense of closure and healing. And there's a lot of prep work as well. So we're not just throwing people into a room and hoping for the best. My assailant took part in 7 months of extensive therapy leading up to this, and the facilitators put in several hours of preparation work to make sure it was really trauma-informed.
I mean, you went through the court process as well, and then this. Did you comparing the two, is this much preferred in your view, in your case?
This is why, I haven't stopped talking about it since it happened in 2019, because it was really night and day. My experience in court, as so many of us see or have lived, it was so re-victimizing. I felt like I was the one on trial. I was up on the stand for hours and hours defending my character and just digging into these memories that were so painful to me and so invasive. And I didn't have the right on the stand to say, oh, I'm not comfortable answering that, because I could be deemed a non-cooperative witness. I could be penalized for that. And so when we shifted into restorative justice, it became so humane, so consensual, so trauma-informed, and it felt like every step of the process was actually about my reclamation and healing.
A conversation happened instead of a back and forth adversarial process, effectively, right?
Exactly.
But in Ontario, the issue is there are impediments to that, certainly when it comes to sexual assault. Is that right?
Yeah, there are barriers in order for people to access restorative justice processes. I'd say the biggest one is a lack of awareness, right? We can turn on Netflix and watch a million true crime shows that all take place in a courtroom, but we're just not having this conversation about other routes to justice. So there's the lack of awareness, the lack of funding around really great programs that do exist, And really significantly, there is a Crown policy right now that says that Crowns cannot refer sexual violence cases into restorative justice.
So if it gets to that point, is that what you're saying, that it's too late? You have to sort of, in other words, people have to be aware of it and ask for it?
They have to know about it. So if I knew then what I know now, I would never have gone through the whole court process, which was so painful to me. I would have just directly contacted a restorative justice organization, which you can do. But because I had reported and I started going through the process, it basically meant that I didn't have the right to change my mind. So I was drowning in this court process that was so painful and also very likely to end with acquittal. And there was no information given to me about restorative justice, and the Crown wasn't technically allowed to make the referral or even to offer restorative justice.
So your whole thing right now is to get word out on the option, I guess, if that's the way to put it, that exists.
It's really about consent. Like, informed consent means we're giving survivors all of their options and we're supporting them in choosing the one that most aligns with what they actually need.
If this conversation continues across the country at this point, is that that's a good thing in your books, I imagine?
Absolutely.
Like it's having a moment almost, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, we look at the rates of reporting, less than 6%. We look at the rates of acquittal, like we've just seen with the Hockey Canada trial. Acquittal is so common. We look at the re-victimization that survivors experience in the courtroom. And to me, it's so clear that we don't necessarily need to close this door. Like, let this be an option for the people who want it, but we need to open more doors to justice that are actually humane, trauma-informed, survivor-centered.
Thank you so much for speaking with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Long considered a staple of Canada-U.S. relations, free trade has been a critical strategic tool to grow both countries' economies.
I'm sending to the Congress what will be one of the most historic pieces of legislation during my presidency, implementing legislation for the U.S.-Canada Free Trade Agreement.
But faced with Donald Trump's aggressive trade war, could free trade become a thing of the past? We'll break it all down next. Donald Trump says he has clinched new deals with several countries, but as Washington's August trade deadline looms, trading partners face intense pressure.
Donald Trump has really disrupted the rules of global trade.
As tariffs reshape U.S. trade policies, is the idea of free trade dead? Andrew Chang, host of About That, explains the shifting priorities on both sides and whether we ever really had free trade to begin with.
Free trade is not what most people think it is. It's not really free, and it might be about to become dramatically less free long term, maybe for good. When Canada's Prime Minister was asked this question in French about whether a trade deal with the U.S. without tariffs was possible, he said, there's not a lot of evidence that any country in the world can escape Trump's tariffs.
I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly.
The concept of continental free trade has been enshrined in law for almost as long as I've been alive. And for nearly as long, it has been seen as a critical economic, but also strategic tool to grow the global economy on U.S.-friendly terms.
I'm sending to the Congress what will be one of the most historic pieces of legislation during my presidency, implementing legislation for the U.S.-Canada Free Trade Agreement.
But there are signs it could be on its way out, if it was ever more than an illusion to begin with. You know the notion of free trade is strained when Mark Carney calls it almost free trade, with a long list of exceptions.
En effet, presque le libre-échange qui continue. Mais il y a des problèmes, évidemment, dans le secteur de l'acier, l'automobile, l'aluminium, le pharmaceutique et les autres bois d'œuvre et tout cela.
Because in those problem sectors he mentions, steel, cars, aluminum, free trade doesn't exist. In some cases, it hasn't for years, and the cost is only going up. In March, Donald Trump put a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. In April, he put a 25% tariff on the Canadian content in cars. And in June, he slapped an additional 25% tariff on steel and aluminum.
The likelihood of living with tariffs is very much a possibility. We are very much looking at a situation where we likely will have some form of tariffs. They may not be lifted, if they are at all, until next year.
And Canada has retaliated against some of these tariffs in kind, with matching percentages, with the threat of also taking tariffs on American steel and aluminum up from 25% to 50%, just like the US, if the two sides can't reach a deal to ratchet things down. And pharmaceuticals, yet another potential free trade exception. And these exceptions all stack on top of another set of broad-based tariffs Trump has threatened. Starting August 1st, 2025, we will charge Canada a tariff of 35% on Canadian products sent into the United States, separate from all sectoral tariffs.
This is going to fix the trade deficit. This will go a long way to fixing the trade deficit.
So this is the state of free trade today. And think about where it might be heading. This new threat of a 35% broad tariff on Canadian goods, it actually does not apply to goods that fall under North America's current free trade agreement, which allows products through borders duty-free if they're sufficiently North American. So, for example, if you've got a shoe assembled in Canada, but made entirely with Chinese rubber and Korean fabric, and let's say a big part of that shoe's value comes from overseas, that's likely not covered under this deal and would be subject to the 35% tariff. At the outset of the trade war, the White House estimated most Canadian exports to the US, 62%, did not technically fall under the trade deal. In part because some companies actually preferred to pay very low duty rates rather than fill out the paperwork to prove that they're trade deal compliant. But a recent RBC report suggests as Trump began piling on tariff after tariff, almost 90% of Canadian exports seem to have entered the US duty-free. That's a big shift in compliance. So whether by rejigging their supply chains or just deciding to fill out the paperwork, more and more trade has started to fall under the umbrella of this agreement.
It becomes very important because when the average tariff for the United States was about 2% or so, whether you're USMCA compliant or not, didn't make a huge difference when you're trading across North America. But if the tariffs go up to 10% or more, obviously you want that duty-free treatment.
And it does mean next year's renegotiation of CUSMA becomes all the more important.
And this is one great area of uncertainty when it comes to free trade in North America. CUSMA, or the USMCA, depending on where you live and what you call it, it's up for renegotiation next year. And the US seems dead set on changing the terms.
Are you going to renegotiate that free trade deal, the USMCA?
Oh, I think the president is absolutely going to renegotiate USMCA. Okay. It makes perfect sense for the president to renegotiate it. He wants to protect American jobs. He doesn't want cars built in Canada or Mexico when they could be built in Michigan and Ohio.
He continues to be interested in autos. So we saw the rules of origin tightened with the USMCA as opposed to NAFTA. So there could be a further tightening there or a more US content requirement.
But here's the thing. The best anyone can do right now, really, is to make an educated guess as to what Trump's administration will want out of a new trade deal with Canada and Mexico, because it falls largely to Trump's discretion, which leads us to perhaps the single biggest problem in negotiating anything trade-related with the United States. It goes without saying, Trump and his team see trade as leverage to get what they want.
Of course, it seems fair that you should pay a tariff to do business with the greatest customer on earth, the American consumer.
For Trump, tariffs are often transactional and perpetually subject to change. See an industry that needs shoring up, whether it's steel, aluminum, cars, lumber, pharmaceuticals, energy, slap a tariff on imports. Feel like Canada and Mexico don't adequately police fentanyl at the US border? slap a tariff on imports. Want to extract more money from Indonesia? Threaten a 32% tariff, then agree to lower it to 19% after they agreed to buy 50 American jets from Boeing.
Yeah, so that shows you where we're in a different world. The old world of trade agreements was you talked about each country's tariffs and bilateral trade across the border. And now what you see with the Indonesia agreement is that other issues will be brought in, defense issues, foreign policy issues. President Trump doesn't have any strong ideals, or at least strong attachment to the idea of free trade.
You also have to remember that tariffs are maybe Trump's most long-standing political position. He's been talking about these things for decades. It seems to be something that he wanted to do long before they became something that he could use for leverage as he became president.
I think a lot of people are tired of watching other countries ripping off the United States. Japan is a money machine. Saudi Arabia is a money machine. Why aren't these countries, these wealthy money machines, paying us for the defense of their freedom and their nations?
This is a fundamentally different way of seeing the moving parts of a trade relationship, really, than we've seen for a long time. I'm not saying Trump invented tariffs, but he certainly seems to see them more as a tool of domestic political policy than any kind of stable economic framework.
We all know he can say one thing one day, and he'll be out on Fox News or wherever, changing everything.
There's been things going on that we don't like, and things going on where they took advantage, and hopefully we'll be fine with Canada. I love Canada. Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state.
One of the problems with the Trump administration is that it's a moving target in terms of trade policy. So even if USMCA is renegotiated, you want to have a solid agreement that we know will last at least 5 years, if not more. You don't want to reach a whole new agreement that provides for duty-free treatment, and then a year later, the U.S. administration comes up with a new justification, whether it's fentanyl or migration, to overturn the whole agreement.
So this weaponized uncertainty has evolved as a tool of the administration, not knowing what's going to happen or the unpredictability of the administration increases their leverage.
And even Trump's own deals aren't necessarily immune to his own changing opinions.
We have big deficits with Canada, like we do with all countries. I mean, I look at some of the deals made, I say, who the hell made these deals that are so bad? If I look at some of these agreements, I'd read them at night and I'd say, who would ever sign a thing like this?
The answer, of course, is he did. Kuzma, the USMCA, that's his deal, negotiated during his first presidential term, and whose terms he now believes need re-examining.
He feels that Canada has taken advantage of the agreement, misconstrued what was negotiated, and it needs to be redealt.
What this all signals is a real shift in what has been the prevailing paradigm for some 40 years, that free trade is intrinsically economically good for everybody who's a party to it.
In the 1980s, the U.S. became more enamored with free trade when it realized that free trade could also be a tool of democratic development and foreign policy influence. It was an important tool for the U.S. Now we're moving into an era of more managed trade, industrial trade, open trade as long as it benefits my country more than it hurts it. But when the benefits are reduced, then we're out to change the rules. And Donald Trump has really disrupted the rules of global trade in significant ways, not just in the NAFTA or USMCA region, but globally.
And of course, the nuance here is that free trade was never truly free to begin with. Exceptions have always existed, whether it's supply management, dairy tariffs on the Canadian side, or punitive tariffs on softwood lumber on the American side. But Trump has really changed the rules of the game, and it's not clear to anyone whether those rules can easily be changed back.
If Ottawa and Washington fail to reach a deal by August 1st, some goods from this country might face a 35% tariff. Coming up, a woman spots a giant sea turtle off the coast of British Columbia.
The person I was with, he was like, that is not a sea lion, that is a sea turtle.
Her reaction to documenting a rare endangered reptile in our moment. This is a leatherback sea turtle, one of the oldest and largest sea turtles on the planet, pictured here off the coast of British Columbia. Victoria Bradshaw was out fishing when she got a glimpse of this ancient beast in action. Tonight, their rare interaction is our moment.
This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I was out with my other friend and we were just about to start fishing and this giant head pops up behind us. And at first I thought it was a sea lion. The person I was with, he was like, that is not a sea lion, that is a sea turtle. We dropped everything. I just grabbed my phone as fast as I could. And I really didn't know that sea turtles could get that big. He was just cruising along the surface and just kind of gracing us with his presence. He looked very happy. I have seen some amazing animals. This is number one. I didn't know it was on my bucket list, but it clearly was. Oh my God. The last one I know was seen at that lodge was in 2008. They have a boat named after it, Leatherback. The sightings are so rare. It truly just is so magical for me. And it just makes me appreciate things so much in our waters. I just feel so special.
Fun fact, we call them ancient. They've been around this planet for 100 million years. Less fun fact, since 2003, they've been endangered. Rare sighting indeed. From all of us here at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Paul Hunter. Take care.